Hi and welcome once again to Walker Tea Review. It's that time of year, it's September, when the fair weather iced tea drinkers kind of inch back towards the hot tea drinks and we're all ready to go. It's getting closer and closer to holiday times. Some people are thinking about teas as gifts. And so we're going to be looking at teas today, enjoying the teas, tasting the teas, so that you can, for example, if you're out on a business, if you're in a business meeting or meeting a client, you may want to take them out for tea, show off your skill, help other people appreciate teas, and enjoy a good cup with somebody together. We're going to be looking at Mighty Leaf's tea today. It is a Darjeeling, a black tea from Okayti. This is an autumn flush, and we have our trusty steeping tasting cup here. I'm going to go ahead, get this one started right now. And as usual, this is a tea tasting, so we're going to have or provide opportunities for everyone to kind of discuss the dry leaf. You may want to go ahead and start looking at your dry leaf now. Make a few comments on the smells that you have of the dry leaf, the shapes and colors as well. But if you're ready, if you also, or as you're doing that, I should say, you can also get out about a teaspoon. We've got our basic equipment with us. Like I said, we have our tasting cup, our kettle here. We've got a wine glass that allows us to look at the tea together, the liquor together, and stick your nose in the cup well and smell it. Now I've got about a pretty good even, well, a little bit above even level of teaspoon here. I'm going to add that in, just so if you're kind of judging this with your own tasting cup, you want to be able to notice that you've coated basically the bottom of the cup there. You can see a little bit of little spots here and there of the bottom of the cup. These are still white, but for the most part, it's a nice spread, even level of covering of the bottom. Now this is Diageo's tasting cup that we're using. We've got our hot water that's been brought to a boil and brought off, and we're going to, because we have a black tea, we're going to add water that's hotter, which is closer to boiling, and we're going to be filling up to the little notch there, which is where we'll be pouring out of in just a moment. Now let's go ahead and set this down, and we can set this aside for just a few minutes and let it steep. And of course, as we're doing that, this also gives us time to talk a little bit about our dry leaf, a little bit about this particular tea as well. And again, this was from Mighty Leaf. This is their Okayti. Now, an interesting thing about Mighty Leaf is that they have actually partnered with the Okayti estate, and they've actually set aside certain lots or areas of the estate that will be kind of Mighty Leaf's specific tea, and they can be able then to select, do we want this as a white tea? Do we want this as there are some Darjeeling greens, although they're quite rare, or do we want this to be like a first flush, second, which teas do we want from this particular section that we're working on? That tea will not, the website has information that indicates those teas will not be ready until 2010, between 2010 and 2012. But again, this 4 ounce of their current package runs for $12.76. Because this is an autumn flush that is currently in the process or very recently been harvested, it's likely that this is a 2008 harvest that we have in front of us. Okay, so we're going to be looking at this dry leaf. Again, as long as you are ready to join along with us. If you're not, you can pause very briefly, finish up those tasting notes of your own. I'll take out a little bit of leaf here in my hand. Look at that. First thing we want to do, of course, is to smell as well. Kind of get a few whiffs there, because one of the things I'm noticing about this tea is that the smells are not that strong. A little trick, whether it's with your teas that you've ordered online, or if you go into a shop and you have some teas that are some dry leaf that is laid out for display, and you get the impression it's been out in the open air for quite a while. A little trick that you can always use is to pick up a little bit of the tea in your hand, create your own little steam room, and breathe in a few breaths. Let the heat and moisture from your breath warm those up, and that'll be able to draw out a few smells if your sniffer's not that sensitive, or if the tea, like I said, has been kind of aired out a little bit and lost some of that edge. So some of the things that we're getting off of this is it is a little bit more of a kind of a toast, or a little bit slightly oven toasted, roasted type of smell coming off of this. And but again, along with that, the characteristic smells of Darjeelings, you're still getting some of that kind of like a raisin or apricot type of smell coming off of this. So that's the first thing we notice about our aromas. Of course, the next thing we want to be looking at is the colors and talking about the shapes of our dry leaf. And yes, as usual, you're getting the traditional characteristic shapes and colors of a Darjeeling. Although, I mean, you do have some of the, let's see, the bister type color. You have a rust type color as well. You also have some of the kind of silvery looking needle aspects, indicating some kind of delicate tips there. Again, these are these have been chopped or cut so that they're not full size leaves, but they're sections of leaves, and kind of twisted along the length, or along the vertical axis, I should say, of the leaf. Okay, so that kind of covers our description of the dry leaf. Again, this is from the Darjeeling area, which is up in the northeast reaches of India. I'm going to go ahead now and take a look at our wet leaf, or see that we've had enough time to steep, and yes, we have. Next thing we're going to be doing, of course, is pouring from our tasting cup. If you have a tasting cup like Adagio's that does not have a hole in the lid, that means it's going to be a little tricky when you're pouring, because if there's not an air flow in as the tea flows out, it can create a little, doesn't pour that smoothly. So the simple way that we solve that problem is we stick our thumbnail there between the lid and the top of the cup, and that creates a small gap. We want to be able to take our other finger, place it on top of our lid so that our lid doesn't slip away or fall off from us, and then when we get it over our cup, we do want to make a very quick pour. We made a few drips, but that's okay, because we can clean that up. It's always nice to have a towel handy, something to soak up little drips like that. And make sure we get all of it out, because we do want to look at our wet leaf. If you need to make some notes, if you haven't already started, you want to make notes about your wet leaf, you do want to look at or make notes of the aromas coming off of your wet leaf. Any changes in color as well that you may detect in your wet leaf versus your dry leaf. And of course, these leaves will likely open up so that you can actually look at some of the parts of the leaf. Now, the other trick, if you want to develop your skills of using a tasting cup, is that we are going to now turn this over, and hopefully the tea leaves that have been stuck here to the side as we poured, if we'll turn it over and give it a good shake, they'll land on the top of our lid there. Let's see. Yes, there we are. Now, okay. First thing we're going to be doing, before I forget, if you're not ready, again, pause very briefly, touch up those notes that you may have. You may only get, of course, aroma comes first, because as it cools, aromas can dissipate. So always get your aroma notes first. Second, you can set this aside. The color of the leaf is not going to change that significantly, especially if you just set it off and let it cool for a while. So, next thing, of course, you want to be able to do is get a sniff. Now, I'm Still getting a lot of the same smells, aromas that we got from our wet leaf. There's a very subtle hint of that kind of tomato vine smell that comes off of a lot of your Darjeeling. What else? It's getting also that kind of baked apricot aroma as well, which is still present. And then of course sometimes that it's more baked apricot. Some would describe it more as a kind of like a raisin or grape. But that gives us a little bit about our aromas. Let's also look now and talk a little bit about our wet leaf. Now, if you're wondering why the light suddenly changed, one of the lights just went out. So we're going to be half dark, half light here, and we'll try to compensate for that. Our wet leaf now. Our wet leaf has brought a bit more variety in color. What you see when you look at your wet leaf, now you suddenly have bits of kind of olive drab as far as the green goes, and at the same time you're still getting a kind of a rust red coming off of the leaf there. So variety of colors, and as usual, as we said, not solid full leaves. We've still got sections of leaves, and I'm going to say that most of these leaves, because of the way the color is presented, I'm not getting a strong or significantly clear line of the edge of the leaf is more oxidized than, say, the middle of the leaf, because the way these were chopped, a lot more was exposed and it oxidized, fermented more consistently across the leaf. Okay, so we talked about our wet leaf there. We're going to also be going ahead next and talking about our liquor here. And of course, when we talk about our liquor, we're going to be talking about the aromas. We're going to be talking about body, how's the texture, the feel of it. We're going to be talking about any aftertaste as well. How long is the aftertaste? How strong is the aftertaste? And are there any differences in the aftertaste versus the taste in your mouth? So again, when you're ready to make your taste, you also want to be able to kind of look at, you want to be able to slurp it in, allow the air to come in, unlock those flavors. You want to be able to swirl it in your mouth so that you get the textures and you get that feel of how it just sits in your mouth as well. Okay, so those are some of the first things you want to do. If you want to do that on your own, make your own notes first, go ahead, again, pause now before we move on. Now, if you're ready to go ahead, of course, one of the things we're also going to be talking about is our color. And this kind of gives us a view of our color there. And how would I describe this color? I would describe it as ochre. Yes, I'm kind of experimenting with more precise, I guess, labels or descriptions for colors. These actually come from Wikipedia, so you can be able to look there for yourself and find out which colors you would most associate and what connections you would draw when you're describing things like teas, foods, dry leaf of teas, those things. So ochre is our choice of color, the best description. Getting a little bit of a smell here. I got a subtle hint of the tomato vine and the aroma. I got a bit of the kind of baked apricot, because we talked about those kind of toasted, roasted notes in the dry leaf. We talked about our wet leaf did have kind of like an apricot, and those are coming together as a kind of a baked apricot kind of smell, like an apricot pie type of aroma. So, of course, the next thing we're going to do is give it a taste. How should I say? The tomato vine aspect, very subtle. The apricot taste, a little more dominant there. The feel, I would say this, in comparison with, say, for example, a second flush, this one's got a bit more of a soft, silken, silken texture, slightly, I would say brothy compared to the others. What else do I want to say about this? I'm going to also say that, yeah, the astringency level is still fairly low. I mean, it's not a big kick in the mouth on that part. Bitterness, no, not really. Aftertaste, fairly consistent. Carries on with those same kind of aromas and tastes that we talked about from the smell and the taste as well. Yeah, now, what I would say about this tea is kind of wrapping it up. You know, there are certain characteristics and aromas and that we expect from Darjeelings, those grape or muscatel type aromas. A lot of them have a kind of a floral rose type, and then also that kind of zesty, tangy tomato vine aspect. This one had some of those, but given the clues that we started from the very beginning with our dry leaf, we had that when we were able to pick up some aromas from it, but we had to kind of blow on them, steam them up a little bit with our breath to draw out more. That indicates, again, and we know this is a 2000, at least a 2008. There's some age on this. Some of this flavor has probably dissipated, has been lost. So while there is potential there, again, this goes to what we've been talking about before. Storage is important. Freshness is critical. Protecting your teas is crucial. And without those things, you have a tea that's just, it's not a heavy, it's not the top hitter. It's not the, the front row, the A performer in the class. And so we get to give this one an 88. We would like to have seen stronger, more pronounced aromas to it. It may have also been able to bring out a little bit more of the briskness, the puckeriness that we want, just a little bit of kick, a little bit of a pinch there in our mouths. That could have come out more strongly if this had been a newer, fresher tea. But again, tell us what you think. This tea, Darjeelings are often called the champagnes of tea. Tell us what you found as far as the champagnes that you've uncovered as far as the tea world goes, and give us some feedback. Let us know what you're tasting. This is Jason Walker, Walker Tea Review.